Well, welcome everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. And I would like to introduce Wendy Whelan. My name is Tammy Davidson. I'm the EVP of Client Services here for Right Management in South Florida. And Wendy Whelan is our Vice President of Consulting Services and an executive coach with us. Let me tell you a little bit about Wendy. She is an experienced talent executive. She has a very distinguished career, and you are going to find that she's a high energy person. I love having her as a high energy business partner with me, and she transforms everything she does. From change management, learning and development, onboarding, competency models, coaching, organizational culture, she is just a wealth of knowledge, and I think you're going to find her delightful today. Before joining us, she had a very long career. Notably, she was VP in the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. She was also served in the hospitality industry as a major player in Hyatt and Marriott hotels in the Chicago area, and she's just a wealth of knowledge. So we're pleased to have her this morning. I want to give you before I leave you, I want to give you a fun fact about Wendy. She was in an all-girls band and a drummer in 1980, so you can tell that high energy started young. And when we get started today, if you want to, please refrain from talking during the presentation, but you can chat and you can ask questions. And at the end, Courtney will gather those questions and to ask Wendy. So please enjoy the webinar today, and Wendy, take it away.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Tammy. I really appreciate that. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to spend the next 60 minutes with us to talk a little bit about civility in the workplace. And so I recently read that by the time George Washington was 16 years old, he had copied down 110 rules for civil and decent behavior. And some of those rules included always showing respect for others, standing when other people stand, not speaking and interrupting others when they're speaking. And in the 1700s, Ben Franklin identified the importance of civil behavior with one of his many quotes here: "Be civil to all, sociable to many, familiar with a few, friend to one, and enemy to none." If George Washington and Ben Franklin were alive today, I have to assume that they would be amazed at how incivility seems to have taken over American life, particularly at work. Standards of behavior seem to have declined. Surveys over the last 2 decades suggest that employees' behaviors such as disregarding emails, showing up late for meetings, gossiping, playing favorites are prevalent more than ever. So today I'd like to cover with you a couple of objectives. We're going to talk a little bit about the definition of civility and incivility, and talk a little bit about how it impacts the workplace and how it impacts individuals. We'll talk a little bit about some practical steps for accountability and how you can apply some of these steps to reinforce or strengthen the culture at your organization. We're going to examine a few organizations and some case studies about how companies have built civility into their culture and into their strategy. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about some examples of incivility and some of the benefits of having a civil culture. Tensions are high in the world today. We all recognize that. When people don't feel respected, productivity suffers, their engagement lags, and retention of individuals at your organization can be jeopardized. In 2018, there was a Harvard Business Review article written by Christine Perath that found that 98% of the workers that she surveyed over the last 20 years experienced rude behavior, and 99%, almost all of them, have witnessed it. And that situation certainly seems to be worsening in the world today. As leaders, We're responsible for hiring and training, evaluating employees' behavior, and really setting that stage to be able to shape the culture of an organization. So let's talk a little bit about what is civility and what is incivility. So civility is demonstrated through manners, courtesy, politeness, speaking respectfully, and really having a genuine concern for others. It's truly those little things like a smile, saying hello to someone in the hallway, and really concentrate fully when someone's speaking to you. The opposite is incivility, and that is rude, offensive behavior. It can be belittling, it could be excluding someone, and it could even be threatening behavior. Incivility is typically not a form of malice, but rather a form of thoughtlessness. Leadership has a significant role in bringing to light incivility in the workplace. However, for some of our leaders, it's a little bit harder to distinguish because it tends to be a bit more subtle than workplace bullying or harassment situations. So it's not as easy to spot. So let's take a look at how does it show up in the workplace. And so it could show up by individuals who might be leaving early. Maybe the absenteeism rate is going up. Maybe there's individuals that might be cheating on their time card or borrowing supplies from the supply office. Perhaps it's showing favoritism or gossiping, blaming others. And then the more obvious are sexual harassment and verbal abuse. Those are the ones that are a little bit easier to spot. So these are the types of uncivil behavior that shows up in the workplace. And so here are some examples. How does it manifest itself? You know, civility is you're going out of your way to help someone. You're using your manners. You're righting your wrongs if there's a mistake that's made. You're showing respect. You're including others and asking for their feedback and input. Incivility could be put downs. It could be sarcasm, derogatory comments. Sometimes it could be in the form of texting, right? Sometimes we have yellers and people who slam their hands on the desk, and that shows up as uncivil behavior as well. So that's how it manifests itself in the workplace. So what is the impact that uncivil behavior actually has on employees? Most business leaders spend a great deal of time worrying about receivables and inventories and some of those hard costs that are easier to get your arms around. But what are the soft costs on employees when they are exposed to uncivil behavior? 48% intentionally decrease their work effort. 38% decrease the quality of their work. 80% of the employees lost work time because they're worrying about the event. And here's a big one that we all should take note of is 25% admitted to taking out their frustration on customers. So if you think about repeat business and customer experience, that can have a huge impact on the bottom line of the organization. So now that we understand the impact that it has on individual employees, what is the cost of incivility to an organization? There are two costs. There are the soft costs and the hard cost. And some of the soft costs include the reputation of your organization in the marketplace. Do people want to do business with you because of your reputation? What about the customer turnover? If customers don't feel that an organization is treating their employees with dignity and respect, they may take their dollars elsewhere. You might find it difficult to hire. There might be particular leaders in the organization that have high department turnover and people just don't want to work for them. People quit, right? And sometimes people will quit but stay, right? And so those are the individuals that feel trapped. They stay at the organization, but they're completely unengaged. And then you have some quiet employee turnover when people are leaving and you're not really sure why. So those are some of the costs, soft costs to an organization. And then there are those hard costs. This is turnover, retraining when you have to hire an individual. Again, absenteeism could be high. Perhaps your healthcare costs increase because individuals are seeking more care, and you'll see utilization of your healthcare programs. You might see lower productivity, right? We saw that there is a direct correlation that employees who are exposed to incivility actually decrease their workload. You might see more worker compensation claims, right? More people are getting injured at work and need to take time off. You also might see more family medical leave claims where people need time away from work. And lastly, and we all know this, a hard cost could be litigation, where individuals bring suits against the organization for uncivil behavior. So like any virus, incivility can take a company down. Incivility is a condition that truly impairs people's productivity, their motivation, their cognitive ability, and their just overall well-being. And it quickly spreads, just like COVID. Incivility is rampant in the workplace, but it's not confined to the workplace. You can pick it up in schools, you can pick it up in the grocery store, you can even pick it up online. So let's talk a little bit about how incivility impacts our cognitive ability. There have been studies that show incivility steals your cognitive resources and it disrupts your attention. Whether you're being impacted by that uncivil behavior, or even if you're just a bystander or a witness to that behavior taking place. Incivility impacts how attentive we are, how we process information, and how we use information to problem solve. So there was an incivility study in a healthcare setting, and among healthcare professionals, it's recently drawn some attention. I'm in the medical world. The potential of incivility can jeopardize optimal patient care and in turn impact patient safety. Incivility can disrupt attention that causes people to miss some critical information. Dr. Christine Parath wrote a story and shared about a doctor whose medical team in a West Coast hospital administered the wrong treatment to a patient immediately after having an uncivil encounter with a supervising doctor. The necessary information was right there in the patient's chart. However, somehow they lacked awareness and attention to take it into account. Simple mistake, right? Well, that patient died. What's scary is that this example is far from unique. Across a study of 4,500 doctors and nurses, 71% tied uncivil behavior to medical errors that they knew of. 27% tied this behavior to the death of their patients. So incivility creates a fog, right? It hijacks our focus and chips away at people's performance. So now that we understand the impact of incivility on an organization, let's transition to the practical next steps that you can take back to your workplace for immediate application. We all know the culture starts at the top. It starts with the executives, it starts with senior leaders, and perhaps it even starts at a board level. The first step to creating a culture of civility and respect is to clearly articulate the organization's norms. You might call them standards of conduct, you might call it a team credo. It also might be in the form of a formal policy at your organization. There was a managing partner at a law firm by the name of Brian Cave, and he led his employees through an exercise to define what those collective norms for the organization should be. He asked the participants, who do you want to be? Followed by, what norms are right for our organization. And they agreed on these 10 norms. The Civility Code, which is what they call theirs, is prominently displayed in their lobby, and according to the team, was directly responsible for the firm being ranked #1 on the best place to work list. So identification of those norms are key. There are 9 steps that leaders can take to build a culture of respect. So after you define what that acceptable behavior should be, next incorporate that into your hiring process. Make sure that when you're selecting individuals to join your organization, remember that every individual that joins could be a threat to your culture. So hire for that. Make sure that you're identifying individuals fit to be able to mirror and embrace your organization's culture. Then train, right? Train and communicate that expectation and those behaviors to everyone in the organization. For the new hires, it's through your onboarding process. Perhaps it's reminding folks through departmental meetings, frequent reminders so this behavior is front and center. It's also really important to make sure that the employees understand the consequence of disrespectful behavior. There also should be a reporting process that you have at your organization to be able to escalate issues if they're not able to be addressed at a manager level. Once we've trained individuals, reinforce and reward those positive behaviors in the hallway, at meetings. You might even consider including some civility questions or behaviors in an employee survey. Exit interview data. We talked a little bit about the people who leave an organization quietly, and sometimes we don't know why. So study that exit interview information to determine if there is an underlying issue of uncivil behavior that you might not be aware of. Coach. Ongoingly coach others. Make sure that it doesn't become normalized. Rudeness is displayed by public figures on TV and in social media, and sometimes it just becomes normalized. And make sure you're protecting your culture and not let it become normal, part of your business. Accountability. Leaders are responsible, as well as employees are responsible, to hold each other accountable for professional behavior. By not addressing unprofessional behavior, an organization then starts to begin to provide tacit approval. Think worldly, think beyond just your organization. There's a lot going on politically, there's a lot of unrest, and it's okay to talk to employees that appear to be stressed out about worldly news, the economy, COVID, homeschooling. So have those open and transparent conversations with employees that you may see struggling. Effective leaders should always be monitoring the pulse of the organization. Plug in. It's a little bit harder now that we're working remote, but this is where the water cooler conversations, the smoke break area, this is where you learn a lot of what's going on in your organization. So listen really carefully for clues and trends that might be going on in your organization. Now that your employees are working remotely, it's okay to pick up the phone, start a meeting with Zoom, and ask people how they're doing. Just take a moment to check in with them so that we can maintain a pulse of the culture of the organization. So let's take a look at a couple of organizations and some examples of how these companies built civility into their culture. So we'll start off with Marriott. Marriott identified 3 pillars of employees' well-being, right? So to feel good about themselves, beyond just maintaining good health, but feeling good about their financial situation, feeling good about their career path, and in their current life situation. They also noted that employees should feel good about the environment, feeling welcome and respected at work. When they're comfortable, they're going to put forth that extra energy to take care of customers. And then they want people to feel good about the company, a company that they're proud to work for and are proud to be affiliated with, especially when it comes to the mission and the company's role in society. And so Marriott takes a stand that the expectation is that everyone contributes to creating a positive community in the workplace. The message is reinforced at meetings, at events, and through various awards throughout their culture. Corporate culture plays a huge role in the employee experience, and when employees feel good, it can pay off in huge rewards for the organization. Let's take another example, a look at example with Google. Google had some unrest and there was quite a bit of litigation that was brought to the forefront, and it was really regarding their internal company network that they used to communicate. And so their approach was to be able to identify some behaviors, and maybe these are text terms, but to prohibit doxing, which is revealing someone else's personal information, making blanket statements, and really took a stand that, understand more, seek to understand. It's not about being right. And Google experienced a number of instances which employees threw around the term single mama drama at departmental meetings. And of course, the incidents were reported to the HR team, and the organization took a stand. This spring, the company gathered 1,400 employees for a community meeting and had all of its global locations dial in for the event as well. And what they did is they took a very serious stand and talked about how Google has a zero tolerance policy for any type of harassment or discrimination. And what was important and critical in this meeting was that everyone heard the message at the same time, which was really important and impactful, and gave an assurance to the employees that they were really taking a stand on uncivil behavior. Zappos, we talked about the 9 steps, and one of the steps is to be able to reward positive and professional behavior. Zappos also thinks that congeniality should be considered in every performance review. So what behavior does your review system motivate? Oftentimes, organizations miss the mark in this area. So Zappos implemented a WOW recognition program, and it's really designed to capture people in the act of doing something right and doing the right thing. Any employee at any level that sees a colleague doing something special can reward them with a WOW, which includes a cash bonus of up to $50. The recipients of these WOWs then are automatically eligible for a Hero Award. And the Hero Award is chosen by top executives. And if they win this award, they receive a covered parking spot. For a month, they get a $150 Zappo gift card. But what's really symbolic is they also get a hero's cape. So if you think about even some lighthearted ways to reward behaviors, can be a powerful symbol about the importance of civil behavior. So if you take a moment to reflect on how might you address uncivil behavior if you're witness to it, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's at the grocery store, how can you address uncivil behavior? When we address it, we receive benefits. And so here are some of the benefits that your culture and your organization will benefit from when civility is abound in your workplace. And so greater respect and consideration, diversity and inclusion is a big topic for a lot of executives right now. And so people want to feel respected in the workplace. An organization may see an increase in morale and engagement. Employees will feel that they truly have the opportunity for advancement and be able to grow in their career and their company experience. An organization may see an increase in productivity, people going that extra mile, people volunteering to take that next step. You'll see better results, which will in turn perhaps increase revenues for your organization. And we already talked about some other benefits like workplace injuries would decrease, family medical leave requests might decrease, etc. There's one thing that I failed to mention about creating and sustaining a culture of respect at your organization, and it's about being courageous, which is sometimes very difficult. It may mean even holding board members and C-suite executives, and sometimes even your peers, accountable for civil behavior for all employees. So what's next? If you're currently in a leadership role, evaluate how your own organization operates. Based on the practical steps that I provided earlier, determine where there might be an opportunity to enhance your current culture. If by chance you're in a transition, consider the culture of the organization for your next employer. Specifically, what would you look for in that culture, and how can you determine what that culture looks like during the interview process? Understand what their value proposition is to their employees. So I want to leave you with one last thought. In a world today where you can be anything, be kind. So I mentioned that diversity and inclusion is on the minds of a lot of executives these days. And in absence of a comprehensive diversity and inclusion plan, civility training is really a good first step to bring awareness to your organization on the importance of civil behavior. And Courtney, with that, I'll turn it over to you to see if we have any questions. Hi, Courtney.
I was muted. It looks like we do actually have a have a question from George. He asked, how can we shield company culture from political incivility creeping in? We have a policy similar to Goodyear, but the president just called for their boycott because of it.
That's a great question. And I think a good first response is to be able to have those open and honest conversations, especially with the political landscape being what it is today in the upcoming election. I think it's important to make sure you're having those transparent conversations because they are going on underground. And so to be able to address those openly and respectfully would be a recommendation that I would have.
Great, thank you. And I know Carla had said when you gave the example of Google, she said that that was a great example.
Yeah, it's really an opportunity to take an inventory and go back and dust off if your organization has standards of behavior and really keep it front and center and hold people accountable, which is sometimes hard to do. But making sure that you have those behaviors defined is really a critical first step.
And again, we'd like to welcome anyone who may have any questions to go ahead and just ask in the chat.
We are getting a lot of thank you for your insights, Wendy. And one says from Jill, shifting culture definitely takes time. Thank you. Jessica has a question. How do you tell your supervisor they are being uncivil?
Very delicately. Provide them with feedback about their behavior, the impact that it has on the organization or the individual, and then talk a little bit about the expectations of what you need from them in the future.
Okay. Another one from Dawn. What is a good way to engage leadership to develop the workplace civility culture?
The best place to start is to get those senior leaders and maybe if it's a board around the table and do what the law firm did and really engage those leaders in defining what that behavior needs to look like. I would also encourage you to get feedback from the bottom up. Sometimes these behaviors or codes of conduct or standards are created at the leadership level and then pushed down. However, maybe that's where it starts, but then get the lower level of the organization involved and have that culture created and get their feedback from the bottom up, which is also important for buy-in.
I think, Mindy, I'll add to that too. You gave a lot of wonderful statistics at the beginning of this. It was just terrific. There are so many things that a leader needs to know. And if you're in any one of those businesses, when you have your normal touch base with those leaders, just say, you know, I was on this call and I think we need to have some of this talk and conversation, because look at what it could be as a cost to our business. Mm-hmm. And think about the cost to our business. That is the best way when a leadership team starts to say, wait, let me think about that. Let me think about long-term in my strategy. Let them mull it over, chew on it, and I guarantee you they'll come back and say, now what did you say about that civility training? Mm-hmm. As Wendy said earlier, we're getting, the reason we did this webinar is we are getting so many calls on inclusion, civility training, and helping you get to that mission that you have. So if you have questions for us, please don't hesitate to call Wendy and myself. Did you have another question, Courtney?
Yes, ma'am. It looks like Megan had asked, how do you navigate philosophical difference when it comes to accountability culture versus playing the blame game? What are tools that we can use to train our EEs on a positive culture of accountability?
You know, accountability really starts at the top. First and foremost, again, you need to have these behaviors outlined to be able to have them front and center so that people understand how to behave. And then really you use those behaviors in those conversations. So when there was an example about, you know, how do you tell the supervisor that they're being uncivil? It's a great way to pull that out and just say, this is how you react in that meeting, and you were demeaning to the individual who was presenting. And if you take a look at our code of conduct, that's one of our behaviors is respect to others. And so you pull that out and then you hold them accountable. And unfortunately, in the HR world, if that accountability doesn't change the behavior, it might lead to some form of progressive discipline, right? And it may ultimately lead to separation of the organization if that behavior doesn't change. Hopefully through conversations and providing effective feedback, that behavior would change over time.
It looks like we have a question from Cody. He asks, do you have recommendations about dealing with incivility in social media? An example, employee being uncivil on their personal account. Employees might see this and view it as a window into acceptable behavior within the organization. Thoughts?
That's a great comment. And really what I have seen in my experience is that organizations really don't take a stand on the social media side. That would be certainly something that I would confer with legal counsel on. That's a really fine line. And you're right, a lot of organizations have a policy about social media that individuals are not able to post organizational feedback on their personal accounts. And so I would start with making sure that there is a social media policy in place about using the organization's name and impacting the reputation on social media. And then I would also advise you to engage with legal counsel if you're seeing that line being blurred about how you should handle that.
And then Shelby asks, any advice or tips on helping employees realize they can't always control others' behavior, but they can be a role model for an inclusive and civil culture?
Yeah, that's a great question and really hard, because they may be upholding those standards of conduct, right? But people around them are not. And that's where the leader really plays that role. And to the question earlier about accountability, those behaviors from others need to be addressed. And sometimes they're not, right? And so an individual may be upmost professional in the organization, and they're witnessing and they're bystanders around it. And we saw the statistics that even if they're a bystander, it has an impact on them. And so really, it's the leader's responsibility to address it. And if it's not being addressed, I would escalate the issue, whether you have a hotline at your organization or go talk to your HR team to make sure that the behavior can get addressed.
Thank you. And it looks like that was, we don't have any other questions. If anyone has any, please feel free to ask it in the chat.
Wendy, while people are thinking, I have a question. You know, you've done a lot of this training, and can you tell us or share with us, in all the trainings, have people just really not understood this and then had that aha moment when they think, wait a minute, I did do that? Can you share a little bit about what you've seen as you go through those things?
Sure. You know, I think we all understand this, right? It's a matter of bringing to light and creating that level of awareness again, because this is not new information. Just treating others with respect is just human nature. And I can tell you that there was another client that we were working with that had issues of texting was an issue. People were disrespecting each other via text. And there were some very slight innuendos that crossed the line almost of a sexual harassment, but not as obvious. It was just more of these innuendos, right? And so some of the innuendos that come up that people don't even realize have an impact on others. And so there was, there were some examples that we shared with Disney. There are quite a few innuendos in some of the Disney movies, interestingly enough. And so we were able to share those examples of how slight nuances or slight innuendos, like reading between the lines, can cause uncivil behavior. And so that's one particular example was with an organization that it was the innuendos that we needed to address.
So interesting, Wendy, so interesting. Courtney, any more questions from our wonderful audience?
No, ma'am, that's it.
Okay. Well, as you know, you have Right Dirigent's phone number. You have our cell numbers. You have our emails. You know we answer any question we can, anytime we can. And so we are here for you, and we will always be here for you. So I want to thank everyone for getting up and joining us this morning. I want to wish you a wonderful, blessed day, and we will be sending this out to you, I believe, everybody that joined, and sending you some more information. And have a great day, everybody.